Hi there, welcome back to the Dylan Rounds case. I've returned because there are things to cover, to talk about, discuss, and I'm sure a range of other people can share their thoughts too. Welcome to those that have returned, and those that are still here, and those that may be in this live premiere right now. Feel free to share your thoughts, opinions, discussions about the case, about what you think about it, whether you agree or disagree with my thoughts, and you can talk amongst yourself as well with other stuff too. We're just getting back into it. It's not been done for some time. Granted, I did a previous Dylan Rounds related one in recent time, but it was more so to do with the documentary and the BS going on in the background. If you are interested in that video and you need to catch up on it, it would be advised, top right corner of the screen, click on the eye symbol, you'll be able to find it there. And as well, the Dylan Rounds playlist of all the coverage that I've done on this case. So, do I expect to be welcomed back? No. Do I expect some kind of resistance? Of course. Okay, it is what it is. But, as I said, a few days ago or so, I just had the idea of doing Dylan Rounds' case because it feels like it's gone a bit quiet. Really no coverage now because of the state of the case and where it's currently at. But if there are things to talk about, then it should definitely be covered, right? And I think there's a range of people out there that don't understand the importance of that, and they just throw it under the rug. They brush it, they dismiss the Dylan Rounds case. And today I want to share with you my interest within the case, not too in depth because I might have done something similar in the past. So I just want to summarize it there, my interest within the case, to explain it to you as to why I cover it and why I've done it for quite a while. And as well, the mysteries within the case, because that is a key element and factor which may get neglected, right? Whether it be a mystery storyline, a mystery event, sighting, etc. We can talk more in depth with that later on in the video, so it's best to stick around from start to finish, or at least try to fully understand this video. If for whatever reason you don't have time or quite the attention or focus span, feel free to watch this video as much as you can and maybe finish it off another day. Because as we've seen in the past, when some have come on in and rushed it or skipped straight to the end, they've missed out key components of the video, and then there's been misunderstandings. But it's not been my fault, okay? So these video formats work best, of course, in the Dylan Rounds case, because even though it's just like a case like any other out there, maybe it's more so true crime related, it might apply more to the true crime community. It seems like the structure of those type of cases and videos, such as Dylan Rounds and Further Afar, do attract a certain type of audience that like to engage in conversations and discussions in a long format video, such as a live stream or a live premiere. And it works here perfectly, so I do take that on board. Whereas with mysteries, missing person cases, not linked with true crime, they tend to be more snappy, storytelling, narrating, more polished, more straight to the point. And it's trying to get the balance between the two, considering I do cover different cases of different topics and themes: true crime, mystery, missing person case, true crime, murder mystery case. You see the crossovers, it does overlap with one another, but the audience may not always overlap, or the styles that go with it may not. So it's just about working things out as we go along. I don't know the last video that I did, how long ago it was, but I can always refer back to the comments either today, depending how long this video goes on for, or I can include it in the next video after, just to respond back to comments and questions, etc. And there might be the odd interesting point by a certain someone which could be acknowledged as well. I'm going to that in depth. As a heads up on what to expect for the future videos and stuff, I'll probably be doing one on the truck, the Jubilee truck, just giving my thoughts there, looking back at that, reflecting. The other video we'll be looking at Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, how it can be a lose-lose situation at times. That one might not be as long, so if I compare it up with the comment sections, it'll add a bit more depth to it. So I'm just working out on the spot, so you get like a quality video, but the length as well. So it means more time for people in the chat discussion box to share their thoughts, etc. So I guess with that all being said and done, let's just jump right into the point of what's my interest within the case. Why does it bring me back here to Dylan Rounds? Considering where things are at, we're just simply waiting, aren't we? We're waiting that preliminary of Brenner, which I think starts the 14th, 15th of May, and it's like 2 to 3 days. Candice Cooley did say that she's confident that it'll work and that they've got the momentum, but then fast forward onwards, she was saying how, well, we don't know. It could be delayed, it could be called off. You know, there's always that uncertainty. So confidence has been slightly knocked with time. Kind of interesting. Quick question, because I did try looking for it on YouTube, tried looking on Google, didn't see anything news related. Has that Dr. Phil episode aired yet to do with Candice Cooley, the Dylan Rounds case? Has anyone seen it yet, or has it been advertised? Or are we still awaiting that? Because, a date wasn't given previously. They said something like, oh, next week, so this week or the week after, I wonder. If anyone knows, feel free to respond back in the comments section. Oh, just whilst I remember, anyone watching right now and later, if you got some additional thoughts or any questions, feel free to leave them down below under this video, and we can always respond back to them. Down below in the pinned comment, you'll find one by me with some additional links if you wish to check it out. If you want to support the channel in alternative ways, it's all there. So with that all out the way, I'm interested in the Dylan Rounds case because of the environment. There's crossovers with the previous case that I've covered: desert terrain, mountains, mine shafts, caves. So we're looking at that type of geography and geology and all of that. It's easier to relate to or get an understanding of the story case, the possibilities as to where someone went, where they could have ended up, where were they disposed of, right? Similar with the previous case of where did the hiker go? Did they get trapped, injured? Was it intentional? Have they simply gone missing, or is there more to it? And looking at the environment, what's present? Is there any details, any strange findings? Because such as when you're out there searching for a missing person, dead or alive, you might come across clues along the way. So there are similarities there with the terrain, how it looked visually, vast, open, dry. Whilst it's Lucin, Utah, the desert, and the other case was the Nevada desert, Mojave, there are still some similarities. And take in mind that some of the searches did take place across the border on the Nevada side, such as Bald Eagle Mountain. So how things looked kind of similar to what you may have seen in previous hikes of a completely different case like Kenny Beach, right? So there's that interest there. If you're already interested in that type of environment and how it looks and appears and the possible mysteries behind it and the clues along the way, well, if there's something similar that does the same thing, you'll probably be interested in that as well. And that's kind of how it applies to me, right? As for the individual, there's no magnetizing effect there as it may be for other people. As others get emotionally connected, I don't. That's what helps me to be able to maintain that balance so I don't go off the deep end like others do, right? But the circumstances of how things played out and what happened to Dylan Rounds would be described as tragic, unfair, an early life taken away from an innocent person. That's the best way of putting it. And when you round it off like that, right, that there is a once a missing 19-year-old farmer out there, and then they went missing, and this was the last time they were seen a few days before, and this is the last time they were heard from on the day of when things unfolded. And then you pick up on the clues, the timestamps, the phone pings from what witnesses had said, and stories coming out and some not making sense and others contradicting one another, some lies in the background. Whilst yes, it did become a bit of a messy situation and it did drag on, I can understand why other people out there, right, when it comes to the interest factor, yeah, at the time, early on, when it's fresh, it's ongoing, it's new, what's going on, let's understand it. And then with time, you do learn. And then you think, well, what else is there to do? Or what else is there to cover? That's it. We wait until the next official event. But in between, besides keeping the case alive just by talking about it, very important, you can also find out stuff along the way. You can make sense of things which you may not have been able to previously. You might even pick up on new perspectives now which could apply in the future, right? And that's happened to me. So when I've done videos in the past of a certain theory, a finding, a possibility, and I've worded it precisely, accurately, even if it's not a fact or the truth, I made it clear as to it's just an idea. And what's happened is something similar, or what I was talking about did happen or was found, or something found which could link to my idea later on. So what I say now could happen in the future, just like my predictions, and then you can tie it together. So although you may not be the one in control of the case, sometimes you can predict or anticipate what will happen next. No harm in that, doesn't cause any damage to the case. You're not revealing any sensitive information. You just so happen to be on the same wavelength, possibly at times, so things unfolding, but that's all it is. It's just a coincidence, but it can happen and it can add value to it and the interest behind that as to what could possibly happen next. And to be honest, whilst people can say, what about the interest? What about the mystery? What about the mystery of uncertainty? What about that long period of time from 22 to 2023 of information changing, story switching and changing from within and outside, from the could call it the family, or the outsiders, the people that live in the local area, etc. Things were adjusted with time, and with unfortunate drama and conflict that came with it, you mix it all up together, it's a little bit, what would you call it? Unexpected. You might not know what happens next, or the twist and the turns. There was a lot of twist and turns with time, so there wasn't a dull moment. Though, arguably nowadays, very silent, very flat. What can you do? Is it about reviving the case, resuscitating it? Not so much, because there seems to be a plan in place as to what will happen next. It's just a waiting game. What can happen in between? Well, who knows in the background? I guess searches are still ongoing, because with the weather and wintertime not being as bad as it was the year before, well, more things could be done. It's just that not as many things can be talked about nowadays compared to the year before and the year before that, right? And some of the evidence, what we've heard, that's been collected, DNA evidence, it hasn't been cleared up since. So it's not, I guess, it's not discovery evidence, but it'll probably come up in the trial, the court of Brenner, but that's some time away. When we see it in those court documents, you might actually see that, to be honest. So, yeah, you've got that. I just wanted to add in those little factors of the elements of surprises and twists and turns, which can add to the interest of, I wonder what will happen next. I wonder what we can expect next. But with time, as things slow down, that interest slows down as well. It doesn't for me, but it may for others. So what are the other factors which, what I'm present here for, besides the environment, besides how the case unfolded? Once upon a time, person here, last seen of, last heard of, this happened, treated as a missing person case, similar to Kenny Veach, but then with time and the foul play elements and evidence, treated as a homicide investigation, then the charges on Brenner for the murder, the desecration of Dylan Rounds. So I would still refer to it as a missing person case, even though it's very likely that Dylan is no longer alive, because Dylan is still missing. You call it his remains have not been found. So it is still a missing person. And because it's not been solved, it would mean it's a mystery. When things are unsolved, it's a mystery. So there are still things to solve. There is still things in the air to talk about and try and figure out as we go along, and as other people do within the case. So that's a level of interest there. I wonder what's behind this. I wonder when we'll find Dylan Rounds. I wonder where he's at, right? In terms of the outcome of Dylan, specifically what happened to Dylan, how he was taken out is arguably a mystery, right? Now, maybe I can add these elements and points in when we look back on the photos, because there is a slideshow and I'll present that to you very shortly, because I can talk back over some of the events and specific mysteries or the areas of interest which caught my attention, my eye in the past, and it probably caught some of yours. We can refer back to that. Just said there's a bit of narration as well within this video, and there's visual elements, because I do understand it. It's always good to look at visual elements instead of just my face, right? So yeah, what I would say is, because I need to add in the point of where people downplay, minimalize. This is external manipulative minimalization, where other people out there with time, and I've seen it firsthand, where they'll play it down and say, you know what, we don't care about the Dylan Rounds case, some have said, and others say, well, the case is in good hands, or it's ongoing, it's pending, so there's nothing more you can do, Raf. There's nothing more you can do. Move on to something else or return back to something. And it's like, okay, hold on. There are things that I can do and still need to do, so I will do. Maybe you can't do anything about it, but I can, so I'm going to do videos. And to be honest, when people downplayed the case in general as to Dylan and what happened, you could call it a bit disrespectful in a sense, treating it as it's not as important in other cases. All cases are important in their own ways and they all should be solved, but maybe you can't solve every single one all at once. That's why a range of people cover different things, and it just so happens the Dylan Rouse case isn't covered as much now, so someone needs to get a hold of the reins and revitalize it, if you want to call it that, or get a few more eyes on the case, because it could bring in the right people with time. You never know. It's happened in the past with this community and other communities. You cover something, you question something, you might show a level of repetition, right? And it might trigger some people, but then another person comes in, gives answers, gives an update, genuine too, and it just fills the air. It sets a tone, a better understanding for the right reasons, which is positive to see. Now, you will always get those other outsiders that come on in with maybe the same story and the same truth, what they've been trying to tell all this time. And whilst they continue to do that, and speaking on behalf of Justin Rounds and Candice Cooley, not much changes. They say the same stuff with time, okay, but does anyone else come in with the same message? No, it's just one person over and over again. And even if they are very passionate in terms of speaking on behalf of family members and the truth of the case, why still to this day, why can't the family say it themselves? If some third party person can reveal the truth on behalf of the family, then the family should be able to do it themselves. Okay, they might be tied up, they might be busy, but I'm sure one day in the whole year, just a little response. Even previously when those interviews were done, East Idaho News, or even on Doug's channel originally, right, or elsewhere, could have just simply said, right, we need to set the record straight for this and that. Even Candice Cooley in recent time on Profiling Evil, things could have been set out there, but they weren't. So from my perspective, the third party person telling the truth, it's not as believable when it's just one person telling it. To hear it from others individually, there's more consistency, reliability. And from those within the case, if they said the same thing and outlined it, then yeah, I would understand. But I can't just take it from one individual that claims to be this and that and where they're from. Need more consistency, more frequency, right? It's like with the Jubilee truck. A range of different people have referred to it, right, individually. And even the odd key genuine person has mentioned it too and made their efforts clear in the past as to trying to reach out to Candice Cooley, and it didn't quite work out. But with these individual people referring to that event, nothing more, nothing less, just simply, as put, there was a truck coming from there at that time, we don't know why it was, right? It doesn't really reveal much, it doesn't say much, right? And what I've always said is, if there's an event, a moment, a supposed fact or story which doesn't match with the original narrative but is the truth. If someone added it in and they just simply said, well, this actually happened, and let's say it wasn't that significant, or at least how it was presented, it wasn't done in a forceful way to suggest this or that, which would be completely groundbreaking or a turn of events, right? A turning point within the case. If it's just a simple little fact or a simple little observation or a simple event which is open-ended and not forced in, it seems more genuine that than if someone literally flipped everything upside down and said, Brenna's innocent, this person's guilty, that happened, this happened, that. But if you just come in and say, well, actually, we saw a truck leaving the property, we don't know who it was, we don't know what it was about. Okay. Not much to it, right? Not much to it, but enough for one's imagination to think, well, maybe there are links. It just seems more genuine, that example, because nothing's been forced, and it doesn't turn the case upside down, but it could, down the line, if there was more leads to it. Yeah, I'm saying I prefer that type of method than the other. And on top of that, the consistency behind it. So the example like that is also one of the mysteries within the cases, and I can add on to it within a future video too. But like when people say, Dylan Rounds, he was murdered, he was taken out, passed away, died, that's it, done, this person's been charged, we're waiting for this, case closed, move on, ref. That's a very ignorant line people can come out with. And I've seen it by some people out there and some in the Kenny Veach community, just playing it down. Dylan Rounds case, it's just a murder one, no mystery to it, the end. You're mistaken. The reason why you're mistaken is that supposed alternative reality from what the others claim, that Brenna is innocent and others are involved. Then the other perspective in between where Brenna is responsible but someone else assisted him. So there's some open-ended leads or possibilities, and whilst they've not, well, publicly been looked into or acknowledged by those within the case, you know, not everything can be talked about publicly, so you never know what's going on in the background or what previously has gone in the background. So whilst, yes, we can be talking and going around like headless chickens uncertain, no harm in talking about it because we might be on point with something, which they are too. It's just not been revealed public yet, but it may be in the future. So there's some open-ended areas there, which makes it a bit of a mystery and a bit more intrigue as to who's really responsible, right? In the eyes of how some people think. And of course, it's not just Dylan Rounds was simply murdered just like that. It's how was he? That's a mystery itself. How was he taken out? We don't ultimately know. Candice Cully said she's confident that Dylan was shot. And, you know, I wouldn't be surprised, but it's the lack of proactiveness or the lack of a ballistic test report analysis. I don't remember seeing or hearing anything like that, and it should have happened, right? If someone's been shot, you should be looking for the bullet casing, the bullet residue, any holes nearby. Because, yeah, if Dylan was shot, surely the bullet would have, you know, pinged out behind or ricocheted out of the body and gone somewhere. It'd be a form of evidence. As for the actual firearm which may have been used, we've never heard about that being found or not. It could have been in the background in recent time. It's just not been talked about publicly. And that's a mystery itself, right? Besides, how did Dylan die? What was used? Where is it? Where is the murder weapon, right? Because besides the mystery of Dylan Round's body remains, the other mystery is, where is the murder weapon? That's a very important component within the case, a key piece of evidence, right? Whether it has fingerprints on or not, it would just add to the timeline, it would add to the story and make a bit more sense, right? So, yeah, there are unsolved things, ongoing stuff, which means it's a mystery. So when people say it's not, and it's a simple case, they're ignorant people, they don't understand the depth behind it. Now, maybe some people don't understand or realise the depth behind it because they don't think hard enough or look at it long enough. Understandable. But those that just brush it aside immediately, yeah, that's ignorant. Though because I've been around long enough and I've covered it on and off, or pretty much every day previously, the last year or two, I see it a bit differently, right? Done so much analysing, so much talking that, there should be a level of understanding, right? Because if there wasn't, what was I doing? But no, there was a level of understanding and possibilities. So with that being said, I guess there's no harm in just looking at some of the previous photos, right? Because I did delete some because of the storage, because I didn't think I'd be doing any more Dylan Rounds videos, but here we are now. So let's just reflect back on some areas, locations of interest to reveal is just still a mystery within these locations, because that can be the theme of this video. What are and where are the ongoing mysteries? Is this still things that have not been checked off the list yet, or any possibilities, themes of could something be still there, or on the basis of anything else? Let me show you the photos now. It'll make more sense. So here's just one image to start off with. As for the name of the location, can't quite remember. I think it might not be too far away from a farm. You got like not feeding, also water-wise for animals in the area, cattle, etc. The distance, the vastness, that's the overall theme of this, right? Whereas it might seem a bit more compact here with a few items and objects with a little bridge there and a vehicle parked up in the distance. Way further back, you can see it for what it really is. Whilst it goes on for miles and miles and miles, and there's a lot of distance to cover, whether it be on foot or via vehicle. When it comes to the search efforts, though, that's where it really, really does take impact. The timing behind it, the effort levels, such as searching for Dylan Rounds or searching for clues. And because the full amount hasn't turned up yet, as we've discussed previously, it's the what ifs and the wheres, because I believe, I don't know when it was said, but it was by Candice Cooley and Justin Rounds that the ticked locations off the list, the pond, Dylan's farm, Grainshed property, and some washes, that they've double checked, they've gone back to those places, and they've not found anything else since. But there are still some people within a case insistent that some of those locations may still hold secrets, may hold clues behind Dylan Rounds, etc. And to be honest, not much has happened since, but it all comes down to, I guess, that DNA evidence that has been found by dogs. Where exactly? The odd individual in the past was very insistent on the pond or the Grainshed property being the go-to spot for the dogs and how they behaved. But if that really is the case, and yet it's been searched and there was even a diving team at the start, how the hell did they miss certain stuff then, right? If you're looking at a small area, a concentrated search, and you find some stuff, fast forward a year or two later, you find something else in the same exact spot, what's going on? How did you miss it the first time round? So that was my reasoning behind not quite understanding how dogs could have found something at the pond if many years later, not many, like a year or two later, then there was a discovery, considering there was previous searches. And to be honest, when I said, or at least, no, what was said originally, East Idaho News, I think it was January time of 2023, or it could have been February, but they were referring back to when it actually did happen. I think the interview may have happened towards February, but the actual event occurred in January, the second week, I think, of 2023. Candice Cooley, Justin Rounds, he started Idaho News saying about the pond being drained and cleared out a second time round. But then other people in the background, outsiders or locals or supposed people, some of them, were stating how it wasn't drained. None of that never happened. Other things happened instead. But, physically what you can see is like dredged, cleared out. There was trees cut down. The ground was disturbed, bit of soil disturbance as well with the track marks and everything. And that happened at the beginning of 2023. Onwards, past that point, throughout the year of 2023, getting towards the end, I think, as when Candice Cooley was reposting about the K9 team, the help that they've done, what was found, the verified alerts, 2 of which, right? And that's onwards. That's after the pond was turned up, chewed up and disrupted. So if anything was truly found there, is it because the ground was turned up, dug up and things were dredged out? At the very first time round when they did their searches and investigations there with the divers team, they just didn't really put in enough effort? Would that be the case? So with all the disturbance, when the dogs came back or returned, let's say, at a later point, they then sensed things and picked up on stuff all of a sudden. I wonder. Not really looked at it that way before until now. But let's just move on to the next slide. So I don't know if the bottom right corner screen will show up, but that is my own profile picture or brand profile, whatever you call it, on YouTube. Because this was a screenshot from the video that I've previously done, because I did delete the photos, as I said. But it's just the examples of the wash within the area of what we've looked at on the maps. And yeah, the height of it, pretty deep, of course. And some pockets as well where it goes inwards a little bit. Dryness as well, and somewhat fragile in certain areas. I think people were previously poking at and it crumbled in other areas. Narrow in spots like this, but still able to drive down. And this was the big winter push towards in 2022, before winter time. The big push, the big search, the final one before they had to stop because of the weather getting bad, and obviously that did happen, we saw it ourselves. Is the mystery though, the mystery of the wash or washes in general? Well, we've not heard as much now. In the past, such as Candice Cooley, really focused, concentrated on the wash, and other people were saying, well, what about elsewhere? But the focus was all about the wash. Ever since, it's kind of gone quiet. Well, Candice Cooley did say it was ticked off the list, but is it ultimately ticked off the list? Because if there are several different washes, don't they need to be checked too? And I'm sure they have been, but have they been double checked as well, like this original one? And the wash that stands out to me is the one that comes from Grouse Creek, right? Grouse Creek wash comes down to Lucin and I think joins up. So has that been checked, or would there be no need to, because that's further away from the supposed crime scene? But if you're not finding any more clues, maybe you need to branch out more. Does Grouse Creek fit in that 15.4 mile radius, the initial one at the start with was it the phone tower or the phone ping in general? The data behind it. Not too sure. I think it might. I know it stretches into Montello originally when I did it on the maps, and I thought, well, the radius is that big, but it's not exactly accurate, and it's not meant to be. But what I'm getting at is, if you was to rely on only that, the radius at the start, it really wouldn't help. I mean, the radius that I did afterwards upon hearing Christine Passe Parker was more accurate there. Okay, they said within a 12.5 mile radius of Eugene Mountains, Nevada. And I simply did a radius or a makeshift one, and I pointed the spots out as to where she could be, and I was very close to where she was actually found, right? So it doesn't quite compare there to what we're seeing in this case, but, there's less to work with here. Or it's not come to the same timeline of events like the conclusion, because it's still ongoing. But I want to know your thoughts. People in the chat, do you think there's any mystery with these washes? Do the washes hold any secrets, do you think? To do with Dylan Rounds, to do with the murder weapon, to do with Brenner? Any washes where there could be other victims of missing people? Because that's what we talked about. Besides Dylan Rounds, is there any other missing people within the area? Is it a reoccurring thing? As desolate and empty as it may be, is it a place known for people going missing or being disposed of? I mean, out of all the searches done so far, no one's been recovered. But, it depends where people are looking exactly. Okay, so if we're talking about washes like this, okay, may have been double checked. But washes elsewhere, have they been to the same depth and level? Do we have any other angles? No, we don't, because that's on the outer part. There was those references made in the past that supposedly when Brenner was talking to people, I guess before the death of Dylan, stating how if he was to dispose of someone, he would put him in a wash. Now, in general, if a person was to dispose of somebody in a wash, why do it in a wash when you can do it on ground level? Because surely, either way, it involves burying someone. By doing it in a wash, you're exerting more energy and effort than if you used to do it on ground level. What are the pros and cons behind doing each one? Well, the pros of burying somebody in a wash, like here, you got the opportunity to do it in the ground, on the base, or on the sides of the rock walls, providing it's easy to dig into, of course, if it's dry, crumbly, whatever. So you got that opportunity, two different opportunities. The con, though, if it comes to, doing it on base ground out of the wash on normal land, you're more exposed. And there's only one way to bury the person, straight in the ground, what you're stood on. You can't do it on the sides, you can't do it above you, it's below you, under your feet. Whereas here, you got the sides and the bottom to do it. And as I said, the con of on ground level burying somebody, you're in the open, so people can see you. And of course, if you're in a quiet, desolate area, you might be able to get away with it, but you do stand out more. Whereas the pro with being in the wash, you're concealed. And, the deeper the wash, the more concealed you are, because people on ground level, they're not going to see you down here, are they? Even at a close distance, they would have to be peering over the ledge of the wash to see you. So you can get away with it in that sense if you're doing it down here, burying something or digging, searching for stuff, either way. So there's more concealment, there's more opportunities here. But what is the big con, right? Besides energy being exerted more here than elsewhere because you got to get into the wash. As for the ground, is it harder or softer than if you were on base level? I wonder. But the biggest con with this, the risk factor. If you're going to bury somebody in a wash, how deep are you going to bury them? And how long will they remain hidden for? Because if a place like this is known to fill up with water from time to time, and the volume can vary, the intensity and the flow, the velocity of it, erosion will take place with time. As you see, why it's not exactly smooth in some areas, it might be lower down, but higher up, it's all bumping all over the place. Similar to the erosion here, right? It's not one straight wall of a wash. It's crumbled away with time, just like how rivers do. It just takes longer because there's no constant flow of water. But when there is a flow and when there is flooding, it can be quite intense and it can wear the ground away, the base or the sides. So if you think of burying someone in a wash, right, and with time, maybe that dirt ends up being peeled away, which then slowly reveals the remains of someone that has been buried, and that flow of water may disrupt it, and push it out, move it along. So it goes down the wash and it might collect up on the side and wash up somewhere. I mean, to take in mind, it didn't involve any burial, but it still shows how something can be transported from one place to another. It might have been Snake River, correct me if I'm wrong, but in the past, during the Dylan Rounds days of 2022, I looked at one article to put in perspective to Dylan Rounds, which some people didn't understand at the time, and I was just putting the argument across that you got a 300+ pound male, over 6 foot tall, big build, quite heavy. They end up passing away, and they were found in a wash, but they were originally elsewhere, further up, and they were washed down the wash because of the flow of the water. So you think of Dylan Rounds, for example, if Dylan was somewhere here or in another wash, buried temporarily. Erosion, things breaking away, the body could end up washing up further down and being exposed in the open. That's why back in 2022 going into 23, when you did have that flooding, and we saw it in Montello, and it even happened in this wash here when a photo was taken, posted online to Facebook, which we looked at. That's when I started considering, could any of the evidence have washed up elsewhere further down? So you still got that mystery, that what if, right? What if something or Dylan is buried in a wash, and with erosion and time, could it end up washing up and appearing in plain sight? So you got the mystery factor there and the possibilities, right? It can generate interest and intrigue, I guess. This was just a part of the search once again. I guess the element you can consider here, whilst yes, people have said, the area is very vast and open and clear and you can see for miles, or to an extent you can, providing what the weather's like. An area like here and elsewhere, you will get blind spots just because it's open. There's not too much vegetation, it's not too dense, there's not many trees. You will still get blind spots like this where what's over there, what's over the hill, what's over that mound? More open flat ground possibly, but this area isn't quite. There's a bit of a gradient. So you think of the washes again, blind spots, even like here. That's why you got one guy over there, which is, I think, Mob Crew Chris on a little mound pointing ahead. And then you got Justin Rounds on the back of that truck there, the pickup one. And they're just, I guess, surveying the area, looking into the distance, but they require to have to stand onto it to get a better view of things. So you could say there's a bit of a misconception at times when it comes to Lucin and how it's described, vast and open, but there are still blind spots and there are still vantage points required to get a better view of the area. That can come into play when searching for Dylan, and before that, how things, you call it unmasked, followed? Yeah, the events, the desecration aspect. This is an old one now, right? Ticked off the list, doesn't seem to apply anymore, not been referred to since. So, people don't know, this is Montello, Nevada on this side, across the border from Lucin, Utah, west. This is the area where Brenner once lived at, closer to the mountain area, outside of Montello, the town, because he had to move on. But his trailer was burnt down. This is James Brenner's former place of living. His trailer there, or at least the remains of that, and that happened some years ago now. Lance Kelly. That's Lance Kelly, if you're wondering. The person behind the camera at the time was Kimber, the wife. I guess things have changed since, supposedly. Not that it's tied with the case, but these people were involved in the searches for Dylan, whether people agree with it or not, or see it as genuine or false. Searches were done, investigations took place, and it even led to police investigating this area at some point, and that was in 2022. So there was a level of mystery here as to the holes in the ground, the shovels in the ground, what the hell's going on there. Others saying it was staged and faked by certain people, right? So those components of, are we looking at a fact? Are we looking at some kind of genuinity, or is this masked in BS, right? So things like that, whilst it is a little bit uncertain, it still links to the case in some way. And these are the roadblocks, these are the factors and problems we can face with time when looking at stuff. You can ask the questions, what are we looking at? Are we looking at something relevant to the case? Are we looking at something real or staged? Right, things like that. And in the early days, very early days, you probably wasn't anticipating all of that and what was to come. But now when you look back at it, you think, wow, a lot did happen and unfold. Now, it came to pretty much a dead end here, but there was some items of interest found. For example, there was an ash pit where it looked like things were burnt, looked like some kind of bones, and very nearby, there was like some kind of clothing or rag, a bit of clothing, which looked similar to maybe the clothing that Dylan Rounds would wear, right? Farmer's clothing. But, it didn't lead to anything after that. But to me, it's still a little bit of a mystery, I guess. You got the mystery back and forth of, how did the trailer burn down? Well, the original story is the hob left on, gas canisters left within, reaction, ignited, it blew up, set on fire. But didn't many people hear the explosion? They saw it, though, the fire, when it got into the night time, because it lit up the sky. But what about neighbours, locals nearby, a few miles away? Didn't really hear much from there. But then there was that alternative story that was later told that was it Chase Venstra or Vilas went to Brenner's property here and shot at the trailer and then it blew up. So, stuff like that, weird things, going against the original narrative. There's a bit of a mystery component or an odd factor involved. But, the mystery element behind this place initially was, what do we have here? A place familiar, a place that Brenner is familiar with. Could he have gone back here in the disposing of Dylan? And searches were done. They didn't find anything. So I guess you would tick it off the list there. But there's the odd little elements and items. I mean, Lance Kelly did return back to here later after the investigations, and he said that some things were moved and there was like tape, blue tape or ribbon tied here or there, and it seemed a little bit weird. Don't know too much about that. I don't know if you read too much into it, but let me know your thoughts about it. Do any of you think this is still a place that's worth checking out or not at all? Because if one investigation search was done and it was done thorough, is that enough? Because if places like Lucin Pond, Grainshed property, etc. have been checked over and over again and have only just been ticked off the list, or maybe some places are still ongoing, should this get a second opinion, right? I mean, the other area similar in terms of a bit of a scrapyard, you could call it more so, or hoarder's yard, would be, Chase Venstra's former homestead in the desert of Montello, I believe, when a certain someone went there. I don't know if it's worth mentioning the person's name or not, or if it'll trigger a reaction and it'll all go downhill. But a soggy person went down there looking about. Was there much of interest found with Dylan? Not really, but it's possibly the place and the location of an event which occurred or linked back to leading up to Dylan's disappearance of the 25th of May 2022, when Chase Venstra stole some items from a local in Montello, and those items may have been taken back to his homestead, but as like what Weezer said, and the victim of the person that had items stolen, they don't have the true location of that spot. Anyone remember that? So that's a bit of a mystery, but it's not directly linked with Dylan's outcome, but it is linked in the timeline of Dylan rounds, because if it wasn't for Chase Venstra stealing that stuff from elsewhere, he probably wouldn't have ended up in the spot, and Dylan probably wouldn't have ended up meeting Chase at that point. So it all followed in line there as part of the timeline. So, I mean, you could say there's linked, but not in terms of probably the disposing of Dylan, unless Dylan was buried somewhere as a setup. My question to people is, if you think that Brenner is innocent and there are other people that have set Brenner up, where would Dylan have been buried then? Right? Because if somebody has been set up, likely evidence has been planted on them or near them, so it makes them look guilty. Kind of like how people apply that to the Idaho 4 case with Brian Kohberger and that knife sheath, which just so happens to have DNA of Kohberger on the knife sheath, which was found in the crime scene murder house, Idaho 4, Moscow, Kings Road, right? But if that person is innocent, right, but there is a victim harmed and they're missing, dead or alive, more so dead, and have been buried somewhere, and the original killers or killer has set up Brenner, where would they have put the body then? As far away as possible or nearby? Because, correct me if I'm wrong, right, depending how things were done and if there's any DNA upon the body which could be incriminating evidence which links back to the original killer. If not, and it was all done professionally, let's just say, if you're already going to plant evidence nearby or onto somebody so they get the blame, surely you would bury the body nearby to where that person lives as well, wouldn't you? Though, if you were the killer and you were responsible for taking someone out, you're not going to incriminate yourself just like that. You're going to maybe bury the body further afar. Do you see the difference? So if Brenner was truly set up, then why hasn't Dylan's body been found yet? And why was it not buried near to where Brenner was living at to make it seem like he was more guilty than what he is? You get what I'm saying? So that's just a counterpoint, and I think it's a very key one to mention, to be honest. I've never mentioned it before. This is what I mean. these videos, what I do right now, some of this stuff I've never talked about before because it's just not come into my mind. So that's why we always need to refer back to it. This being Dylan's farm, much mystery behind it. I mean, you could say the mystery element of when Dylan's phone past the point of Dylan's death on the day of the 28th, 30 minutes spent within this area, a person in possession of Dylan's phone, preferably Brenner from the looks of it, because the time-lapse footage, Brenner being in possession of it then at 7:27 a.m, fast forward onwards, 7:43, after that point ended up going down here, okay? 30 minutes spent doing what? Kind of a mystery because we don't really know. Things, yeah, may have been taken at that point, at that moment. But even if they weren't, what would Brenner have been doing here, right? Walking around aimlessly? You got that tank down there, septic tank, or a tank used for other stuff. To be honest, this tank, I believe, is the one what Candice Cooley referred to in Profiling Evil and said the oil or the fuel, whatever it is in there, was drained. So I don't know, Badger Life, if that puts anything into perspective, but that's what Candice Cooley said. It was drained. And I guess it was probably used elsewhere, so it didn't go to waste. But it's weird how they won't waste certain things, but other stuff does go to waste, but it depends if they own it or not, because Candice Cooley did say, not here, but the Grainshed property, you know, like here, some of the vehicles along the way were by owners in the past of the Grainshed property or parcels of land with time, and they never bothered taking the items away when they sold up or moved on, so they just left it here and it collected with time. So it's kind of like a hoarding yard, a graveyard of all the different owners that have come and gone with time. But specifically looking here, the mystery of what did Brenner do for 30 minutes on the day of Dylan's death in this area? Was Brenner searching about for money, for opportunity in disposing of Dylan, or just taking stuff so he can gain from it? And my only other point would be, if all the other times and when Dylan was not present here and elsewhere, did he take his trailers with him? So is that why on this occasion Brenner did it? Because it's the one time the trailers are present, and it's also the time when there's not going to be any worry of, oh, is Dylan going to caught me in the act? Because if Dylan's already gone by now, well, who can stop me, right? Just things like that. Of course, this is like photo from the beginning, so you see his two trailers. The one on the left there is more for storage, the one there is for when he lives in temporarily on site when he's doing his work and moves on after. Pickup truck there, as you can see, not the clearest of images. And then the other additional vehicles too, which I think, yeah, that is Kurt Wadsworth's backhoe, I think. And then later on it ended up elsewhere. So mystery behind that? No, because it was cleared up there. So, as I said, there's some mysteries that have been cleared up and others that remain a bit unsolved, okay? So, yeah, with each photo, there's a story behind it and an unsolved mystery, right? Is there a mystery here? Not directly this backhoe, but an alternative one, right? This is what you see in that photo over there. And it's supposedly Kurt Wadsworth's, and it's still there till this day. So there's no urgency in removing it. I wonder why. Why is there no urgency? Is it because it's not worth one's time or effort? You know, let me know your thoughts down below. But the reason why there's a mystery behind the backhoe in general, the theme of, was a vehicle like this, not this one, but one similar, used in disposing of Dylan rounds, the desecration process. More so the back bucket, spade handle, whatever you want to call it. As a reference, it was said, I think, by the shack lady, it was most definitely mentioned by Lance Kelly, that there was blood found on the digger part of a backhoe. Not this one, but another one. Blood found, which could have been of Dylan rounds, such as if that spade head was used in digging up a hole and putting Dylan's body in, it caught a bit of Dylan's blood on it, right? Well, what the hell happened to that story? I've never heard it since. It's never been brought up since. So if there's anybody watching right now and you heard about the story in the past of the backhoe used in the desecration of Dylan and blood was found upon it, what happened to that story? Was it a load of BS, or is it still an open-ended mystery? Because to me, it's a bit of a mystery because I've not heard it since. But when it came to the shack lady, and when it came to Lance Kelly, they were basically saying, well, only some of us know who it truly belongs to, that backhoe with the blood on. We know who it belongs to, but we can't publicly reveal it. Do the family know about it? Well, they never mentioned it in any interviews or never cleared it up either. So are they completely unaware? I'm not too sure. But isn't it weird, right? Stories like that, supposed events and findings. Could be rubbish, could be BS, could be the truth, who knows? But it's not been mentioned since, and that's why I wanted to bring it up now. If anyone does have an answer or an update behind the backhoe with blood on it, list it elsewhere. Now, Quintessential Organics. I saw a comment by him recently saying how in the early days, supposedly blood was found near or onto Don Hatley's trailer. I don't know, could that be a slip of the tongue or a reference to the blood on a backhoe as well? Maybe not, but, you know, what, blood ends up on a backhoe, then blood ends up on a trailer, and then blood ends up on Brenna's shirt. I mean, all over the place, isn't it? Right? I still kind of find it, because I know how it was worded at the time, but I still kind of find it interesting how the process of the time-lapse footage with Brenner, how he had blood on his shirt and DNA from Dylan on his shirt, but that blood wasn't classified as the DNA from Dylan. It was separate DNA. So people were saying how, okay then, that blood on Brenner, what's that blood to do with? Don't mean to say it's Dylan's. And yeah, I know some little arses in the background were trying to be a bit cocky and smart there, but to be honest, I think it'd be a bit of common sense, wouldn't it be? You know, you kill someone, maybe a form of blood, a messy situation, of course you can have blood on you, especially if you start dragging the person about. So I don't know why people are being a bit cocky there, but you know, it is what it is. But referring back to this here, a backhoe. And as said, I'm not talking about this one exactly, but it's just as an example, because I don't know where the second backhoe is, right? If it is in the middle of the desert somewhere, why has it not been found? The only other backhoe that was mentioned, I think it was more so in Montello in 2022-23. Lance Kelly came across it and it was just abandoned. It might have been stuck in, I think it was stuck in the ground, the mud, frozen over, and the ground went hard, so it couldn't really be used. But then after that video was uploaded by Lance Kelly, fast forward onwards, when returning back to the scene, it disappeared. So I guess someone took it away. But, you know, as things move, as possible evidence is shifted around, what happened to the backhoe with blood on it? Where was it found at? Where was it? Why would the shack lady know about that information? Why would Lance Kelly know? Why hasn't the family never talked about it? Why has it not been mentioned in the news articles? Because it would be pretty much a key critical component and possible evidence in the case, right? And although you can't probably use data to track where the backhoe has been, there could still be evidence on it which could lead to a new lead, right? But no, that fell flat. Typical, isn't it? Moving on. Grangeshed property. Much mystery there nowadays. I mean, maybe not. This is an old photo from the beginning, hence why you don't see the backhoe here. This was taken later, okay? That's at the Grangeshed property. But look, you see the truck there. You can see behind it the track marks, right? I mean, it's pretty self-explanatory from what we've heard from the story. That Dylan supposedly parked his grain truck in the grain shed, even though some out there say he never made it and never parked it. Some are saying that the grain truck, just in general, was never put into the grain shed because it couldn't fit in. Oh my goodness. I mean, when people keep going round and round there saying, oh, the grain truck couldn't fit in the grain shed so it wasn't parked in, then how come there was witnesses, statements and reports that Brenner got into the grain truck and drove it out so he could continue his spring cleaning inside of the shed? And the police were there to witness it as well, besides Candice Cooley, etc. Did that never happen, even though there was witnesses there? Are you saying that the police are lying now? It's silly, isn't it? Right? And this is the other thing. Yeah, it was already mentioned at the start that the grain truck didn't quite fit into the shed, but there was still more than enough space for the back end of it where the seed is, the most important part that needs protecting, which would be covered into the grain shed. Because, okay, maybe looks can be deceiving, but when I see the length of the shed and the length of the truck, it actually seems like the shed is greater in size than the truck. As said, looks can be deceiving, but still, even if the front end of the truck is stuck out of the shed, so what? So what if that gets wet? It's the load, it's the trailer, it's where the seeds are at, which is most important. If at least half of that trailer covered in seeds can be covered undercover by the shed, it doesn't matter if the rest gets wet. So that's why I couldn't understand why people were just in denial of that possibility. Oh, grain truck, because it doesn't fit into the shed, it wasn't parked in. Yes, but you can still park most of it in where it needs protecting against the weather. There's no doors on the grain shed property besides the horse gate, right? And because there's no doors, it's not like, parking a big vehicle into a garage and then you shut the door, the garage door, and it won't shut, so it's impractical. No, this is an open grain shed. There's no doors, there's no sliding doors, so it doesn't matter if there's anything protruding outwards, right? So it was a bit of a silly situation, that, right? And some individuals with time, obviously there's still some references here and there. I mean, is there anything other than that as for mysteries? I mean, the dugout's back there. I think that was for drainage and stuff. I believe Candice Cooley referred to that more so in recent time with Profiling Evil. Interesting. Brenner's trailer down there, which I believe is the one that Candice Cooley mentioned in recent time as well on Profiling Evil, that Dylan Rounds bought Brenner this trailer. Interesting. This little shed, which I guess is of Brenner's, there's some items in there, some rope, I think a saddle and buckets and whatnot. Any mystery behind it? I mean, was there any resources or items in there that could have been used in the desecration process? I wonder. And the only other mystery part, or at the time possibility, was that burn barrel. Was it used to burn Dylan Rounds? Was it used to burn evidence or something of interest? I mean, the ridiculous nature is that Brenner's shirt, which was seen in the time-lapse footage, which was later retrieved by police from his trailer, was left in his trailer, and he made no attempt in just simply putting his shirt in that burn barrel when it's so close to him. That's the bit that doesn't quite make sense, does it? Right? Brenner supposedly has taken Dylan Rounds out, the desecration as well. Brenner's done all the hard work out the way, and what's left to do? Walk a few meters out of your trailer, burn your top, so, you get rid of evidence, and he failed to do that. Done all the hard work, and then the easiest part ends up completely messing up. I mean, there's still that possibility that wasn't quite thinking clearly at the time, or anticipating that it would be found, or that it would be of use, but, it happened. I want to know your thoughts about that. Do you think there's much mystery behind the burn barrel, or just simple possibilities behind it? Does the grain shed property entice you anymore, or do you think it's a done deal here as for searches and investigations? As for the pond area, as said, this was taken in the past now, but it's after, January 2023 with the ground turned up and stuff and piles and, not about Dale's piles, but piles of dirt mounds and trees cut down. Bit of a mess. Don't know what it looks like nowadays. It's probably improved a bit. Water cleared out that point. But yeah, the phone originally found here, okay, 18th, 19th, 2022, June. But then anything else found since, like what I mentioned early on at the start of this video, with the cadaver dogs and references made that this was the place where they went back to, and that on the 21st of, was it 21st of May or something, 2023, or on a Sunday in 2023, Candice Cooley went down here, or there was dogs that came down here and was checking about. I can't remember really everything that was mentioned, but there's some references. I mean, at one point I was pointing out, is there a possible mystery that root cellar, I think that's what it's called, Was that ever used in the case or investigated? I guess it would have been searched, but still, it just stands out, doesn't it? I mean, before I knew what it was, I thought, oh, is that a secret bunker? Is that the whole Kurt Wadsworth thing? But it wasn't. Not at all. So I guess that was cleared up there. But still, the possibilities of, was it searched properly enough the first time round, right? Probably not enough for multiple searches to take place afterwards when coming back here. As I said, it's such a smaller, concentrated area compared to the overall vastness and land of Lucin, Utah, that if you manage to mess up here and not find stuff the first time round, then what chances do you have in much greater terrain and distance, right? Normally, a concentrated search and area should yield more results and success in short term, and yet it seems longer term with time. Do any of you think this place holds any secrets still or not? I mean, this is a good example of how a person could be buried in that ground where there's water, but maybe it's harder to contain and conceal because the water is somewhat shallow and somewhat clear, and you need to weight the person down or try and bury him in the ground. But through constant water and possible soil disturbance and dirt being washed and the silt, would it act as a good concealment, or would it eventually lead to the body showing? Yeah, let me know your thoughts there. Do we have any final photos? No, that appears to be it there. All in all, I feel that this discussion video and analysis has opened up new perspectives, new talking points, and has also reiterated older points which have faded away with time and have not been cleared up since. So hopefully this video yields interest within people and maybe answers too. Still some more videos to come, so be on the lookout for that. Let me know all your thoughts and comments down below under this video because it will help with the engagement. And feel free to like and share this video, clicking the thumbs up, just so it generates more interest, and YouTube may push it out there, then more people see it, and then more people hear about the mysteries and the interest and the true depth of the Dylan Rounds case, because it's deeper than you think. Not everyone will agree with that, but, you know, when you take into consideration everything, it does appear to be deeper than you think. Now, yeah, it could be cleared up down the line officially that this simply happened, but it hasn't been yet, has it? And there is still uncertainty with certain evidence found but not mentioned public. So it's not our fault, it's the fault of others that hold the knowledge or information but decide not to reveal it to the public. Now, that sounds a bit entitled, but I'm speaking more about the stuff that can be talked about and can be cleared up, but it's not. So what are we meant to do? We can't do much about it. So all we can think is that, yes, the case is deeper than what other people think. Maybe in the eyes of the insiders, it's not as deep, or it's pretty clear cut, but if they're not willing to share with the general public and set the record straight, well, what do you expect from the general public, right? So you got to understand it from both sides there. So yeah, we'll leave it there for now. Thanks for watching. I'll see you next time. Goodbye and good night.